Hello and
Hi,
welcome back to Sugar and Spice.
we are back this week with two more tales, two very popular tales, and in fact, a lot of you will be very familiar with them. And these are two tales that we can relate to very, very well. So, no further details about the story. Let's get started. Deepti, go
Yeah.
ahead.
So today I'm going to tell you a story which is actually a continuation of another story which I had already narrated as part of our Sugar and Spice, stories which it was a folk tale. It is a folk tale from Kerala, and it is the story of Vararuchi and Panchami and their 12 children. So when I finished that story that day, I had promised that I'm going to come up one day with, the remaining stories as well in different, sessions of ours. So here I am with one of, those stories. So the children of Vararuchi and Panchami were abandoned, as immediately after birth. Panchami had to abandon her children as Vararuchi thought that if the child has a mouth, God would have, regarded some food for the child, and that was the explanation given. And the children were asked to be abandoned. With a heavy heart, Panchami had to abandon all the 12 children, and they all grew up in different households. They were the children of a Brahmin and a lady from a lower caste. But as they say, nothing matters when destiny decides to take its course. And they were taken and adopted by people of different caste as well. Among them, one of the most popular persons was Perindachan. Yes, now you all know whom I'm talking about. Even a movie has been made in Malayalam, Srija, on it was a very famous movie, and Mr. Tilagan has done the role of Perindachan
You can't
and done
forget
it
his
so
role.
beautifully. Yes. So for my friends who are not familiar with Malayalam movies, I'm sure this would be a new story. And for those who already know it, it's my way of narrating it. That's all. So I hope you enjoy. The story of Perindachan starts when he was adopted by a Vishwakarma family, and Vishwakarma people, they have their profession is carpentry and architecture basically, and they create things out of stone and out of wood, and they are literally artists in that way. And Perindachan's original name when he was young, he was named Raman, and when he was very small itself, he showed signs of excellence. He just picked up things so fast, and as he grew up, he became a master of his craft. And shortly he became very popular, and he started getting work all over. And most of the temples, in that side of Kerala, in Aluva, he was born near the Aluva river, near Cochin, and most of the temples there are quite a few famous temples which the credit goes to Perindachan, for its architectural beauty. So a few very very interesting instances. He was not just an architect. He always made sure that whichever piece he did or whichever work he did, he would leave a signature of his own in that. There is a temple apparently in his own hometown. When you look at it, the entrance looks as if you're going to hit your head. It looks so low. If you walk straight and enter, you are not going to hit your head. At the same time, if you try to bend down or you try to get in with some strange posture without walking straight, with a doubt in your mind, you are surely going to hit your head. Now this is not something which is a fantasy, this is real. It's still there, and we can always go and try it.
Like an optical illusion.
Yes, it looks, it's all his works have an element of optical illusion, Shrija. So that's like brilliant, yeah. And another like unbelievable story which I heard about Perindachan was that one of the temple ponds had to be constructed, and the people, the people who were in charge, the temple authorities, they were all of them had a different opinion about what the shape of the pond should be. One said it should be a square, one said it should be a rectangle, one wanted a circle, another one wanted an oval. So finally, Perindachan was like, please stop arguing. You will get what you want. He didn't understand what he was saying. But when the pond's construction was over, they were all shocked to see that from any particular direction, if you see it from a particular angle, the pond is going to look like a square. From another angle, if you look at it, it is a rectangle. So you have it all in one. That is again a classic example of optical illusion, and also how he was so good in geometry, and he was a master in whatever he did. His calculations were precise, otherwise such a thing wouldn't have been possible. And when you take a dip in the pond, you don't know which direction. Those days the Brahmins had to actually face a particular direction and take a dip in the pond, which was not possible in this pond. So that was also a very funny story which people started talking about when they spoke about Perindachan. And this continued, his saga continued, and he would do this with every single work that he's doing. Some kind of mischief of his own. Once what he did was, the Periyar, the river which was flowing quite far away from the main temple, there was a pond. So everybody used to, before going to the temple, they used to take a dip in the pond and go. But his son was actually an expert in Tachu Shastram and in architecture. He said, Father, Periyar is so close by, like why can't people just go there? So it is, why would people go there when there is a pond nearby? So he just smiled and said, okay, let us see. And after some time, they say, Periyar actually changed its course and started flowing near the river. Near the temple, I'm sorry. And, he was shocked at the farsightedness of his son. And he also realized that, okay, he is, he's also gifted like me, and even sometimes, maybe even more than me. So that was just the beginning of his son's, the actual competition between the father and the son which started. Perindachan constructed a bridge across the river. Now this was not an ordinary bridge. The moment a person would climb onto the bridge and start walking, there was this statue made of wood that Perindachan had made. It would start moving. It would go down, take a dip in the river, come up, and by the time the statue comes up, the person who was walking on the bridge would have reached there, and the statue would spit the water which it had filled in its mouth onto the person's face. This was like an insult for most of the people, but they couldn't do anything because Perindachan was a great person and they had no say, and no one could cross that bridge without being drenched, without being spat on by the statue. So when this was something which disturbed his son, he thought this is not fair, what father is doing is not right. So he decided to challenge it by creating another statue. Now this statue, the moment again when people got onto the bridge, from the other side the statue would start walking, and it would come to the place where this Perindachan statue was erected, and before the statue could spit, the sun statue would raise its hand. It was a robotic statue. You can imagine in those days, it was a robotic one which could actually move its limbs. It slapped on the face of the other doll or the statue, so that its face turned, right, when the water goes and falls into back into the river. So it was like a revenge. It was like something, he took it as a challenge and he did it, but it was way more for Perindachan. For him, it was an insult. It was as if he felt as if he was slapped.
He didn't take it in the right spirit.
Correct. And he was very, very upset with his son. And that was only the beginning. People started talking. You know how it is. When they know that there is an emotion, and that too somebody who is so good at his craft, somebody who is so popular, that the jealousy factor will always be there. So the people started, as they say, pouring oil into the already flaming fire.
Fueling the fire.
Yeah, fueling the fire. And they started telling him all sorts of things about his son, saying that, now it's time for you to retire, and sarcastically, making fun of him every chance they would get. So this slowly started building up, and they say that during the construction of a temple, where after a long time people stopped calling Perindachan and they started calling his son instead for all the works. So one of the temples, it so happened that he was called, Perindachan himself was called, and he was very happy, and he invited his son also to go along with him. And they both were, doing their work. The Perindachan was sitting on top, and right below him, his son was sitting, and they were both doing their carpentry work. As the conversation happened, among other workers, he overheard this, conversation, that how his son is good and how he should just stop working now and he's grown old and all those things, which they say that spur of a moment something happened. It could have been intentional, it could have been not. It could have been an accident as well. The chisel fell down from his hand right onto his son's neck, and he fell there bleeding and he died. From that day, that I'm sure he was a father, so from that day he found no peace of mind, or he was a wanderer, and he just started going from one place to another. And one day he just vanished, they say. Nobody knows what happened to Perindachan post that. He left his chisel and his the tools that he used to work with. He left it in a particular temple, and then from that day nobody has seen him. There are so many fascinating stories other than these which I just narrated. Never ending. These folk tales are like, they are real stories, but at the same time they're like magic. They're like fantasies which you really can't believe sometimes. So this was Perindachan's story which I wanted to say. Now the other 11 children are remaining. I will come back with those stories as well. For now,
That was a lovely tale, a very, very popular one, Deepthi, and one that deals with very, very raw emotions. And jealousy is something that can crop up anytime in our lives between anybody. So it's a story we can really relate to. The one that I'm going to speak of, narrate to you today, is also a story which is very easy to relate to, and something which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. It's a very popular tale, but I love saying it anyway. I love sharing it with you today. And this is the story of Krishna and Sudama. So we go back to story begins with their friendship, the friendship that Lord Krishna, and who was a prince, and Sudama, who was a poor Brahmin boy, the friendship that they shared back in the school of those days, which used to be called a Gurukul. So the students actually spent time with their guru, their teacher. They did work around the ashram and they lived there. So there was plenty of time to learn and to bond. So their friendship was a very special one. But as they grew up and they moved out of the Gurukul, they went their own separate ways. Lord Krishna went on to become king of his kingdom, very prosperous kingdom, and brought it up to its heights. Of course, there are lots of stories related to Krishna, which we will deal with later on in our later on sessions later on. But Sudama went on to become a poor priest. He was a poor Brahmin, and he went on to marry. He had his wife. He had more than 2 children, and they continued living satisfied. But after a while, things became very tough for them because he was poor and poverty got the better of him. Now, when you speak of Krishna, he had his queens, he was leading a life of luxury back in his kingdom. Sudama lived a life of utter poverty. And one fine day, when there was no food left to feed the children, his wife came up to him and told him, "Look, you have a friend, a very powerful friend. You keep talking about him all the time, and he's somebody who can really help us." Sudama at first didn't understand what his wife was trying to tell him. So he asked, "Who are you talking about?" She tells him, "Lord Krishna." He says, "Krishna?" He says, "Yes, you say that he was your closest friend, so why don't you ask him for help? Because we are desperate now. There's no food. The children are crying with hunger, and look at our clothes. We are dressed in rags. He can help us. Even a little help would mean so much to us. Go and ask him for help." Now, Sudama was a man with a lot of self pride and he didn't want to do it, and he told his wife, "No, I don't think it's right." But then she insisted. She was, after all, a mother, and she didn't like to see her children cry with hunger. So finally, he gave and he said, "Okay, I'll go. Let me go. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'll go. I'll go for you." So when he got ready to go, he had to walk up. In those days, he couldn't afford, of course, any form of travel, so he had to walk up. So, and it was a practice in those days as well as a practice it is now, that when you go to visit a friend, you take something, something by way, a token, a gift to show your love and affection for the person. And Krishna, of course, had been his very, very close friend. So, but he didn't know what to take because he was a poor man. He had nothing of value in his house. Which is when his wife told him, you used to tell me that you always tell me that Krishna used to like sweet rice, flattened rice, which we call poha. Okay, and why don't I think I can find a little, there must be some left, and I'll pack that for you, take it for you, he'll like it. So Sudama, of course, was not sure if that's the right gift, but he said, okay, I'll take it. He used to enjoy it when I was back in Gurukul. So it was packed in a tiny little cloth pouch as it was in those days, and he took leave of his wife and children and went to meet his friend. All along the way, Sudama had these questions in his head. What will I tell him? Will he even recognize me? Because he was reduced to nothing but ribs. He was very, very skinny due to lack of food and a hard life. It showed on him. And he was going to meet a king, a powerful king. But he went out anyway. When he reached the palace, he was in awe at what he saw. The city was beautiful, everybody looked well dressed. There wasn't a single person who looked like he needed a meal. And when he walked up to the palace gates and looked at the glowing, sparkling palace, he was surprised to find that the gates were open. And when he entered them, the guards didn't stop him. So he found that a little surprising. And he went in anyway. He walked up, and when he reached the door of the palace, the main door of the palace, he heard, he found that a big reception was waiting there for him, and Lord Krishna himself was there to greet him. He and his queens. The sight was a beautiful sight. Krishna with his peacock feather and his lovely turmeric colored silk clothes, the dhoti and the upper garment which showed off his beauty. He was so a sight to see, so good looking, and his queens looked beautiful next to him. Sudama was speechless when he saw the sight, and his friend of old came to him, hugged him, and took him in personally. Lord Krishna led him up all the way with all the courtiers and noblemen watching in shock because they didn't know who this was. He took this friend of his, took Sudama, walked him up to his throne and seated him on his own throne, the king's throne. Sudama was too shocked to say anything because he was so overwhelmed by the love and affection that was being shown to him. And Krishna did something which people normally did to welcome guests and people who are of your own status. He washed his friend's feet in a bowl of water because he was tired after his journey, and he asked him to rest. And of course, he was given a wonderful feast, and he was welcomed with so much of love by Krishna and the queens that Sudama didn't have the heart to ask him, tell him why he was there, and Krishna never asked him either, because Krishna presumed that he had come to see him, and Sudama let it be. And now came the part where he had to give him the gift that he had got for him, but how could he do it after so much of this display of wealth and prosperity? He was ashamed to give him his little gift. But Krishna, in his mischievous way, asked him, "What are you hiding behind your back?" It was in a little pouch which he had tucked into his waistband, and he was trying to hide it. So Sudama said, "No, it's nothing." But Krishna said, "No, don't lie to me. I know you've got something. It's for me, isn't it? Where's my gift? It's my gift, I want it." So he grabbed it from Sudama's waistband and he opened it and said, "You got me my favorite poha and you're not giving it to me. What kind of a friend are you? Have you forgotten how much I loved it?" So Sudama watched. Sudama smiled in embarrassment and watched as his friend took up an entire fistful of the poha, the sweet rice, and ate it, and he ate it with great relish. And Sudama's eyes filled with tears of happiness as he watched his friend. And after he finished eating that, Krishna put down his hand again to take another, handful of the rice when his wife, Queen Rukmini, stopped him. And she said, "That should do for now. I think your friend has got all that he needs." Sudama didn't understand what exactly Rukmini had meant at that point of time, but he let it be because he was so happy that his friend had eaten his sweetened rice without a word of reproach, without laughing at him. He was so happy. The two friends spent a lot of happy times together after that, and finally Sudama left. But he did not ask his friend for anything because he felt he couldn't. What he had got was more than enough. And Krishna saw him off and he walked home. But as he started walking home, that's when Sudama started thinking of what am I going to tell my
Reality.
wife? The reality is struck home. Now all the happy times are over. I'm going to go back to my house with all its problems, and what will I tell my wife? Because he knew the poor woman had hoped for something, some positive change, but he didn't know what to do, so he just continued thinking and he kept walking. And finally he reached where he stayed. But when he looked, he thought he had lost his way because he didn't find his shabby little hut there. Instead, he found this huge structure, palatial structure. So he retraced his steps a little to see if he had, while he was in deep thought, if he had got lost, he had taken a different route. He found it was the same, and then he walked back again in surprise and confusion. Where am I? Where did my house go? That's when he heard a familiar voice, and he found his wife running out to him from inside the huge mansion. And he found her dressed in silks and jewels, and his children looking very happy beside her. And she welcomed him, hugged him and said, "I'm so glad you went. Just look at us." So he said, "What do you mean? What is all this?" She said, "What are you trying to say? Are you playing a joke on us? The minute you went away, after you went away, a little later, we had all this given to us. A lot of people came, they helped us, they built this structure, and they gave us all the wealth that we could possibly hope for. And Krishna has done it. We are so thankful to your friend." That's when Sudama understood that he didn't have to ask his friend. His friend knew exactly what he had gone there for, and as a true friend had given it to him without telling him anything about it, just given it to him. So this is one story, and Sudama of course cried with happiness, and he told his wife, "I never asked." So that's the story of true friendship, the story of Sudama and Lord Krishna. And what is fascinating about this tale is it's something we can all relate to, isn't it? When it comes to good true friendship, you don't really have to tell your friends, about your innermost feelings.
And something just clicks with people.
Yeah, they do.
And you just find your friends, I feel.
You find friends in the most unlikely of places, unlikeliest places, which is why we say don't block your mind, keep your mind open. Because you don't know who's going to be a good friend.
True.
And a friend who understands you, like Krishna.
And I think it's very unconditional, the relationship which is
absolutely
most unconditional.
There is not even give and take, it's like
True.
give, the take automatically happens.
Yes.
So that's a very, very popular tale of Krishna and Sudama, which I never tire of reading or narrating. And I hope you liked it too.
Yes.
So those are our stories for today. Yeah.
We'll come back very, very soon with another interesting session.
Yes.
Yeah, more about it. We're going to put up, an announcement on what we are going to do next very soon.
And mostly interactive. So
Mostly interactive, yeah.
which is something which I know all of you
And the
look
topic is
forward
going to be also very interesting.
to.
Something which
we'll let you know very soon.
Very soon. Yeah,
Right.
let the suspense be.
So keep waiting, and as usual, do send in your feedback. Your suggestions are welcome. So this is a bye-bye from Sugar
And spice.
we love you.
Bye bye.